Well, with the election less than 2 weeks away, we are going to sit down with the two candidates running for U.S. Senate.
Republican Leah Vukmir is challenging incumbent Democrat Tammy Baldwin. Our Rose Schmidt went one-on-one with each of the candidates, covering a variety of issues that have dominated the campaign.
And we begin today with Tammy Baldwin.
If the Affordable Care Act were to be repealed, how would you guarantee that people in Wisconsin would have coverage for pre-existing conditions?
First of all, I would do everything that I possibly could to make sure that people with pre-existing conditions had real options, not sham options, but real options. And before the Affordable Care Act was put in place, we had so many bankruptcies that had health care at its roots. I mean, I still remember a letter from Susan from Beloit who talked about her husband's cancer diagnosis. They had insurance, but they were underinsured. They looked at the provision. It covered one bout of their chemotherapy, his chemotherapy. The next round of chemotherapy maxed out their credit cards. The third round, they got a home equity loan. Her husband died, and the whole family went bankrupt. That's the battle days, and that's what my opponent supports returning to. We have got to move forward, and that means fixing the Affordable Care Act, not tossing it out the window.
Let's switch gears to tariffs. What would you do to mitigate the effects from tariffs on Wisconsin farmers?
Last year, we lost over 500 dairy farms, mostly small farms and medium-sized farms. Dairy farmers were already facing tough times, an oversupply and a really low price for milk. That combination is very difficult. But the challenges kept piling on. Our dairy farmers need effective markets, export markets, and Trump's tariffs on Mexico and Canada and the European Union have led to retaliatory tariffs on cheese. So I've worked to urge the administration to end the tariffs against Mexico, the European Union, and Canada. But I also have worked very hard with the members of the Agriculture Committee in the Senate as we put together a new 5-year farm bill. We've seen way too many farmer suicides in the light of the stress that they've been facing and carrying for years now. And so our measure, Farmers First, is in the Farm Bill and would provide folks who regularly interact with our dairy farmers training so that they can look for signs of stress and provide resources.
Should undocumented immigrants who are already here be allowed to stay and eventually apply for citizenship?
You know, I think what's really clear right now, and the way to bring what's become way too politicized together as a bipartisan solution, is to look at comprehensive immigration reform. And so the answer to your question is going to be yes. However, the way that we have brought people who have different priorities in the immigration debate together is by including a comprehensive package that looks at border security and strengthens it, that looks at a pathway to citizenship for dreamers and others in the United States without documentation, and also looks at our visa programs. We have right now an agricultural visa program that focuses on planting season and harvest season. But if you've been on a dairy farm, you know that dairy cows need milking every day, 365 days a year. So the agricultural visa program doesn't work for dairy. We need to fix all of that together. Many people, including my opponent, making this a political issue, not a solution-driven issue.
If the Supreme Court were to overturn Roe v. Wade, what would you do?
What would happen immediately if the Supreme Court were to overturn Roe versus Wade is that women's ability to control their health care, it would be governed at the state level. As a U.S. Senator, I would first of all urge the state legislature, since this would be governed at the state level, to do the right thing, to repeal their criminal laws, and to recognize the right to choose and the right to privacy at the state level. At the federal level, I would do everything that I could to make sure that women can control their own bodies, their own decision about when or whether they'll have children, to essentially try statutorily to do what Roe versus Wade decided, that the Constitution promised.
And tomorrow we'll hear from Baldwin's opponent, Leah Vukmir, on many of these same issues.